Troszeczkę spóźnieni, moi drodzy, wjeżdżamy w największe premiery października. Jeżeli nie wiecie, w co grać poza Ghost of Yotei, to służę pomocą z materiałem, na który sobie właśnie zareaguję. Też się przy okazji dowiem, co tam na streamie sobie będę mógł popykać. Jazda.
Boo! Whether you're into creepy stuff like bats and skeletons, a fan of various products suddenly looking, smelling, or tasting more like pumpkins than usual,
I'm just so happy the pumpkin spice latte!
or you get excited by brand new video games, this is the month for you. So, without further ado, here are October 2025's biggest, spookiest, most pumpkin spice game releases.
Jazda.
On October 2nd, PS5 gets a big, huge, bona fide first-party exclusive in the form of Ghost of Yotei.
No i właśnie pograliśmy. Ja mogę powiedzieć tyle dla widzów z YouTube'a. Zobaczcie sobie materiał. Dla mnie mieszane uczucia. Nie robi na mnie żadnego wrażenia. Niekoniecznie wiem, czy jest to tragedia. Powiedziałbym, że jest to gra, która jest nierówna. Czasami wygląda fenomenalnie, czasami wygląda jak gówno totalne. Walka na początku jest ok, potem robi się dość nudna. Fabuła jest przewidywalna, co dla jednych będzie problemem, dla drugich nie. Warto sobie to chyba obejrzeć, zanim się zagra. Częściowo obejrzeć, bo to nie ma co marnować 340 zł, tak? Na tym PlayStation. To na pewno. Nie wiem, czy będę to kończył po 8 godzinach grania w sumie.
You probably know the drill here. It's a follow-up to Sucker Punch's 2020 open-world samurai adventure Ghost of Tsushima, but this time it is a whole new part of Japan, a few hundred years later, and it's following a new protagonist named Atsu as she gets revenge on the people who killed her family and left her for dead. If that sounds a lot like Assassin's Creed Shadows, you're not wrong, but it also sounds a lot like Kill Bill and Lady Snowblood. It'll be interesting to see how 2025's big, huge samurai games compare, but having more than one feudal Japanese epic that lets you run around killing people with a katana, definitely not a bad thing. That same day, you can celebrate Mario's 40th birthday with remastered versions of both the Super Mario Galaxy games, which are getting some shiny graphical improvements.
Nintendo co dalej farmi na tym samym biednym Mario. Ten hydraulik z Bostonu jest już tak przedymany, ale ludzie dalej go lubią, więc w sumie czy jest to problem? Nie wiem. Mario Galaxy jest jedną z tych lepszych części, z tego co pamiętam, bardziej lubianych, także no, pewnie się sprzeda, ale no ja sobie daruję.
Along with some quality of life tweaks, such as making the Wii-era motion controls optional.
Nikt
Those
nie
are
ma
on
tak
Switch and
przepchanych
Switch
ról
2.
jak Mario,
You can buy them
no.
in a physical 2-pack or grab digital versions individually. On the 3rd, there's Digimon Story Time Stranger. Unlike that other game series about collecting and training monsters, the folks at Bandai Namco haven't exactly been churning these out, and this is the first new entry in the Digimon Story RPG sub-series in almost a decade, so it's going to be interesting to see how it's evolved in that time. That's coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Still in the 3rd, there's Castle of Heart Retold, which is a revamped version of the 2018 dark fantasy action platformer, which got some pretty
Dobra, to wygląda jak gra mobilna, kurwa, co to jest?
dismal reviews the first time around, so maybe this will improve the experience, but if you're dying to find out, you could do so on PS5, PC, Xbox Series, and both the Switches.
To przypomina mi Traina 2. A Train 2 wyszedł, nie wiem, kurwa, z 15 lat temu, nie? I to była dobra gra, no ale błagam.
On the 7th, Captured comes to Xbox Series, which is the first-person horror game seen through a missing kid's camcorder and set in seemingly endless repeating hallways that get weirder as you go, so somewhere between PT and Paranormal Activity. I maintain that everything is automatically creepier in a flashlight beam or through a camcorder lens, and this supports my theory. Still on the 7th is King of Meat, a co-op party platformer that looks like equal parts Fall Guys, Dungeon Defenders, and Smash TV, and you and up to 3 friends will be tasked with surviving chaotic levels designed by other players.
Kurwa, gierka typu przebodźcowałoby mnie po sekundzie.
That's on PC, Xbox Series, and PS5.
Totalnie.
On the 9th, Absalom comes to PC, both
No to ładnie
PlayStations and
wygląda.
Switch, which is a roguelite beat-em-up with some really gorgeous hand-drawn animation, and
Zajebiście
also
to wygląda
frogs, which are always
wizualnie.
good. Not enough frogs in games if you ask me. You didn't ask me, but I'm just letting you know. My birthday's coming up, you know, I'd like a frog.
Classics.
Please don't get me frogs, I'm only kidding. Also that day, if you ever wish that we got an over-the-garden wall video game, well, you're not alone, and Buy Sweet Carol looks to be the next best thing. This narrative horror game is also clearly paying homage to some classic animated films, specifically the ones that had creepy parts that scarred generations of
Stary
children.
Disney.
I'm in. That's on PS5, Xbox Series,
Trochę.
Switch, and PC. On the 10th, Battlefield 6 sees EA and DICE's beloved shooter hopefully make a return to form.
Nie sądziłem, że kiedykolwiek będę mówił na Battlefielda, ale te kurde techniczne testy sprawdziły się całkiem fajnie, muszę przyznać. Jak na antyfana strzelanek, no to ze Spartiatixem jak graliśmy, to mi się nawet kurde dobrze się działo.
And the early buzz seems to be that it feels a lot like Battlefield 3 and 4, which are some of the high points in the series. The class system makes a return, but it no longer restricts which weapons each class can use, which should add a whole new layer of strategy when picking loadouts, and means that I can give my friends little medicine pouches while shooting things with a bazooka. That's on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. If you're tired of games where you run around shooting guns to destroy things, well, I have got the game for you. In Dreams of Another, you run around shooting guns, and for some reason it creates stuff instead of destroying it. This is from the folks who made the Pixel Junk games, but it looks exceptionally out there. That's on PC and PS5, where you can play it the old-fashioned way, or with a PlayStation VR 2 if you have one of those things lying around.
Ta, już se na VR-ze w to zagram, żeby mi oczy wypierdoliło, no. Co to jest?
Fashion way, or with a PlayStation VR 2 if you have one of those things lying around. Still on October 10th, Snoopy and the Great Mystery Club is a new adventure game starring Charles Schultz's iconic cast of characters, which looks to feature puzzles and mini-games and probably
Oni powinni zrobić, kurde, platformówkę Cupheada, takiego run and guna ze Snoopym w roli głównej. Ja pierdolę, jakie to by było dobre.
a healthy dash of chronic depression. That's on PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. Good grief. If you'd like to see a bunch of weirdly proportioned children fumble around in considerably bleaker settings, Little Nightmares 3 arrives that same day as well. This franchise is something of a familiar concept at this point, but the latest installment is developed by Supermassive Games, who you probably know for their scary games about realistic adults getting hurt, like Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology, so interested to see what awful fate they have in store for these creepy little kids. That one's coming to everything. If you missed the first Little Nightmares, that's getting an enhanced edition for Xbox Series, PS5, Switch 2, and PC, and it's totally worth checking out because it's basically Spirited Away if it had been directed by the FromSoft Miyazaki instead of the Studio Ghibli one. On October 15th, there's Ball X Pit, which is, according to the official description, a brick-breaking, ball-fusing, base-building survival roguelite.
Stary, to totalnie wygląda jak te gry na telefon, które ci się co chwilę wyświetlają, że zbierasz ludzików i musisz zestrzelić ścianę i jak zestrzelisz ścianę, to możesz zebrać więcej ludzików i wybierasz lewo, prawo, odpowiednią trasę.
Seeing it in action has me thinking it might be stupidly addictive in a similar vein to Balatro, Vampire Survivors, or Demon's Tilt, so if you're trying to make your brain squirt out some of the nice chemicals, something tells me this might help produce a steady drip. That's on Xbox Series and PC with a Switch 2 version coming later this fall. On October 16th, Pokemon Legends ZA continues the historically turn-based RPG franchise's venture into real-time combat, building on the systems that were established in Arceus and turning players loose in the more contemporary
A wystarczyłoby w końcu Pokemony wypuścić na kompa w jakiejś normalnej, znośnej grafice. Sorry, jak ja raz zobaczyłem Palworlda, to nie mogę patrzeć na te Pokemony. Albo robicie je w starym JRPG-owym stylu, takim najstarszym i są super znowu, albo coś zmieńcie, bo ta grafa mnie tak tiltuje.
Metropolis of Lumio City, which is loosely based on Paris. Looking up interesting things to say about this game took me down a rabbit hole of what Pokemon are called in France, and I'm pleased to report that Psyduck is called Psycho Quack, Slowbro is called Flagados, Jigglypuff is called Rondoodoo, and Haunter is just called Spectrum, all of which is very funny to me. Highly recommend looking up Pokemon names in other languages because it will make you realize what Pokemon fans sound like to people who don't know about Pokemon. Legends ZA is on both Switches. On the 16th, Reach hits all the major VR headsets, not to be confused with the Halo game or the Toothpaste. This is an immersive cinematic action game, and as the name suggests, it involves some pretty grand set pieces that may or may not involve you physically extending your arms to grab stuff. Sorry, was that joke too much of a stretch? On the 17th, Double Fine is back with Keeper, a weird-as-hell looking adventure game that kind of looks like if Howl's Moving Castle and the bird from Up got their hands on a DMT pen and decided to watch The Dark Crystal. I assure you, I mean that in a flattering way. That one's coming to Xbox Series and PC. If you want something a little less wackadoo and out there, rest assured that Kaku Ancient Seal hits PS5 and Xbox Series that day as well, which is what can only be described as an open-world action-adventure combining exploration with puzzles and dynamic combat. I mean, you could probably find other more interesting ways to describe it, but that's what it says on the Steam page, where it's been available since last year. October 21st is a stupidly stacked day for
gramy.
game releases. There's Ninja Gaiden 4,
O,
a sequel
stary,
13 years
to
in the
może być
making,
dobre
Vampire the
wciul.
Masquerade Bloodlines 2, a
To
sequel
niekoniecznie.
21 years in the making, and Jurassic World Evolution 3, the sequel to 2 games based on a movie series that was originally advertised as an adventure 65 million years in the making. One of those games is about ninjas, one is about vampires, and one is about dinosaurs, and I bet you could figure out
Szczerze, z tych wampirów Masquerade 2, co jeszcze miały dramę o content za paywallem, co prawda już zredukowaną przez outrage fanów, ale jednak, i po piekle deweloperskim, a jak mam wybrać między tym a Ninja Gaidenem 4, no to sorry, wybór jest dla mnie oczywisty. Ja odpalam Ninja Gaidena w tym dniu.
which is which. In any case, those are all on Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. Meanwhile, that day as well, there's also Painkiller, which is a modern reimagining of the 2004 shooter
kurwa,
From
a to nie
People
było
Can
polskie w
Fly.
ogóle?
The new version features
Czy ja coś
3-player
pieprzę?
co-op, which looks like good old-fashioned, big, dumb, loud fun. You can go to hell on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series and shoot stuff while you're there. If you'd rather play a game that is about insects, there's also Isopod, a webbed spin-off, which is a 3D platformer starring a roly-poly pillbug, which is on PC that day as well. If you've been aching for a good old-fashioned Telltale-style adventure game, mark your calendars because October 22nd, Dispatch drops its first 2 episodes on PC and PS5. This is a superhero workplace comedy game with a phenomenal voice cast developed by Ad Hoc Studios, which was founded by a bunch of ex-Telltale devs, and it'll be getting an episodic release with 2 episodes dropping each week over the course of 4 weeks. Just like a TV show! Speaking of workplace games, if you're getting tired of punching the old time clock in Factorio or Satisfactory, another game of that sort is coming down the assembly line. On the 22nd, Modulus hits early access on Steam, and if you get in on the ground...
Totalnie nie widzę nic w takich gierkach jak Factorio, ale to jest ogromna strefa odbiorców, którzy po prostu sobie siedzą i klikają na chillu i patrzą, jak te taśmy produkcyjne zapieprzają. Bardzo dużo ludzi to lubi.
Floor, you're gonna be running
Zaskakuje
the
mnie to,
whole
powiem
operation
szczerze.
in
No
no
ale
time.
cóż,
If you're looking to earn some extra dough by
Gusta i
doing side
guściki,
quests
nie?
in your off hours, look no further than Moonlighter 2, The
O,
Endless
jedynka
Vault,
była
which hits
lubiana.
early access on the 23rd. This is the follow-up to the 2018 indie hit in which you were an RPG shopkeeper by day and an aspiring adventurer in your spare time. Still on the 23rd, there's Becastled. This cozy castle builder with a side of tower defense has been in early access since 2021, and now it's finally getting a version 1.0 on PC, and it's coming to all the consoles that day as well. If you want to leave the hustle and bustle of modern life behind and go live off the land like you're in a Laura Ingalls Wilder book,
Whenever you stick your nose in the air with me, Nellie, it's gonna get punched.
Bounty Star might be for you. You can build a farm, raise some crops, and lay waste to your enemies in a heavily weaponized mech
Nie,
suit,
dzięki.
just like they did in the olden days. A lot of people don't know this, but the Little House on the Prairie series is canonically part of Mobile Suit Gundam's Universal Century timeline. Prove me wrong. Anyway, Bounty Star hits the Xbox's PlayStation and PC on the 23rd. Still that day is Full Metal Schoolgirl, which follows heavily armed cybernetic teenagers as they beat up a bunch of robotic businessmen with high-tech weaponry. That's on PS5, Switch 2, and PC. If you
Czego
prefer to
anime
beat up a
gry nie
bunch of street
wymyślą.
punks with your bare hands, that day is also Double Dragon Revive, the modernized spin on the classic arcade beat-em-up that's on basically everything. Finally that day, the now classic 2009 Tower
gramy?
Defense Plants vs. Zombies gets a
zapowiadam, dzień premiery tego Plants vs. Zombies Replanted, odpalam streama, nie kończę go dopóki albo nie przejdę, albo nie zasnę. Ale ja czekam na to. Nie wiem po co to remasterują, bo mógłbym już teraz grać w oryginał, wyglądałoby to praktycznie tak samo, ale walić, zagram, chętnie. Wzięli mnie na nostalgię.
modern overhaul and re-release in Replanted, which is slowly shambling onto everything. On October 24th, the long-dormant Katamari Damacy series gets its first new installment in over a decade with Once Upon a Katamari, which involves going back in time and rolling up a bunch of from throughout history into a giant ball, collecting some power-ups along the way, and also
Są takie gry, że mogliby nawet nie pokazywać, że one są na Nintendo Switcha i ty wiesz, że one są na Nintendo Switcha, nie? No, są takie gry.
meeting the Prince of All Cosmos' weird-looking cousins. That's on PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. Another game about stuff that rolls around is Hot Wheels Let's Race Ultimate Speed, a racing game tie-in to the Netflix animated series that kind of looks like somebody modded Cocomelon into Cyberpunk 2077. That's on PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. On October 29th, you can go blast off into The Outer Worlds 2, Obsidian's sophomore and possibly sophomoric
Ciekawe jak te Outer Worldsy siądą, bo Obsidian przecież robił Evout, nie? I niby Outer Worldsy pierwsze spotkały się z dość pozytywnym odbiorem. Tak Evout już niekoniecznie, nie? Bardzo jestem ciekawy, w którą stronę to tutaj pójdzie.
expedition into post-capitalist outer space, which boasts plenty of weird weaponry and will likely reward or punish your best and worst decision-making in wild and wacky ways. If you like shooting stuff without having to weigh the moral ramifications thereof, Arc Raiders drops on the 30th. This third-person extraction shooter comes from Embark Studios, who gave us the finals, and based on early buzz, it seems like it has some potential to eat Escape from Tarkov's Lunch and possibly nibble on some of Marathon's snacks as well. That one's coming to Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. On October 30th, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake gives the...
Kurwa, i jakby mnie jakoś tak wzięło, losowa chętka, to bym nawet stestował tego Dragon Questa, bo to jest taka legenda w Azji. Dragon Questy to są top 1 selling games, jeżeli wychodzi właśnie jakiś HD remake albo nowa część. W momencie, gdy u nas to wiecie, są jakieś właśnie Ghost of Yotei, tego typu rzeczy. Oni mają zupełnie inny rynek, nie? Zupełnie inny. I tam jest taka podjara na te gry. Bardzo jestem ciekawy, czy mi siadło. No a też na JRPG, nie wiem, jakoś bardziej jestem ciekawy odkrywania ich, biorąc pod uwagę, jak ekspedycja mi się podobała. Wiadomo, że jest inna, ale jednak.
Classic JRPG is a nice glow-up that elevates the iconic sprite art based on Akira Toriyama's designs while retaining all the original charm. I've never been able to get into Dragon Quest, the video games, but I've always loved the monsters, and that is a good enough excuse to show you one of my favorite pieces of video game merch ever made. Get a load of this. It's a mummy from Dragon Quest, but check it out. It's also a tissue dispenser. It's a real thing. They actually put that out. It's an official thing. The weird part is, though, they also make one that's shaped like a slime, but it's a soap dispenser. Theoretically a soap dispenser, though you could probably also put lotion in there.
Ja pierdolę, Max. Kurwa.
Anyway, that's coming to PC, PS5, Xbox Series, and both the Switches.
Litości.
The video game, I mean, not the tissue dispenser. Finally, on October 30th, it is a Gauls Night Out in Asterix and Obelix, Mission Babylon, the latest video game based on the long-running French comic strip. This one is a platformer for 1 to 2 players, and it's on Switch, Xbox Series, PS5, and PC. A few weeks ago, we published our video rounding up the big game releases that are still coming in 2025, which was never intended to cover all of them, but to cover most of them, and one that we totally forgot to mention was Mina the Hollower, which is absolutely a big game, worthy of your attention. Yacht Club Games made a name for themselves with Shovel Knight, and if that was their Mario, Mina is shaping up to be their Zelda. It's clearly taking cues from Link's Awakening, with just a splash of Castlevania thrown in there for good measure. Yacht Club has released 9 games in the last decade that have the word shovel in the title, and if it concerns you that this one doesn't, rest assured that Mina the Hollower still involves digging holes in the ground. That one is coming to everything.
Dobra, powiem wam tak. No, ten miesiąc wygląda na pewno luźniej niż wrzesień. Dalej nie jakoś tragicznie, ale kurwa, jeżeli ja najbardziej ze wszystkich premier jaram się Plants vs. Zombies, no to coś tu jest na rzeczy, nie?
If you want something pixelated that has a lot more colors on screen at once, even if most of those colors are varying shades of gray, blue, and orange, set your sights on Terminator 2D No Fate. This adapts James Cameron's action masterpiece into a faux retro Contra-like side-scroller. I don't know what else to say about this game that isn't immediately apparent seeing it in action, but the title does remind me of one of my all-time career highlights. I interviewed the cast of Terminator Dark Fate at Comic-Con, and during the outro I slipped in the iconic Sarah Connor quote, "No fate but what we make for ourselves," and Linda Hamilton, who was sitting next to me, turned and gave me this look of adoration, and then she pinched me on the cheek like she was my aunt who came to visit. Have you ever been pinched on the cheek by Sarah Connor? Better question, have you watched Terminator 2 recently? Because a movie about a single mom taking down an AI tech company has aged like a fine wine. Terminator 2D No Fate is coming to everything. We are at the tail end of this video, which is the perfect place to tell you that Tales of Xillia Remastered is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. This is a modern updo of the 13th entry in the long-running JRPG series, originally released back in 2011. This is not to be confused with Trails in the Sky, first chapter, which came out last month and was also a redo of one older game in the long-running JRPG series. Would you believe I have gotten these franchises confused in the past? Maybe I should be put on trial. Or perhaps Trials, that motorcycle game that they used to make a lot of. Folks, we did it. We got through.
Dobra, we did it. Nie słuchamy twoich cringe'owych zakończeń. Bardzo spoko podsumowanie. Dobra, IGN zrobił robotę, bo nie musiał się wypowiadać recenzencko. Tak czy inaczej, Plants vs. Zombies, Ninja Gaiden, Little Nightmares, Battlefield 3. Ja mam na to oczy nastawione. Jotej już za mną, bo trochę spóźniony na ten materiał, tak jak mówiłem na początku. A wy dajcie znać, w co wy będziecie grać. Widzowie na Twitchu, widzowie na YouTubie. Krótka piła, nie? Ja polecam, tak jak mówię, wrócić sobie do horrorków jakichś tam i ograć to, czego nie ograliście. Nadrobić co nieco. Battlefield 3 powiedziałem? 6. Wiesz, prawie jak 3. Taki dobry ma być. No, prawie się nie pomyliłem, prawie.